So good morning to everybody. My name is Tatiana Calderon. I'm the Autism Initiative Coordinator here at Synergia's Metropolitan Parent Center. I just wanted to share a few words about Synergia's Autism Initiative. So the Autism Initiative project is funded by a grant from the New York City Council under its Autism Initiative. This project supplements the work of Synergia's Metropolitan Parent Center by bringing increased awareness to New York City residents, particularly to communities with large Spanish-speaking populations, about the growing population of children diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. Its strong outreach component targets families of children with a suspected or known diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder, ASD, who are not receiving appropriate educational, health, or other related services. The initiative will link them to other services and supports that meet the individual needs of children and families. I want to thank you all for being here. We're absolutely thrilled that you can join us today, and welcome to Synergia. So before we get into it, I do want to share a bit of information about our presenter today. Today we have Kelly Mohan. Kelly joined the New York Center for Child Development Mental Health Department as a clinical social work intern for the 2022-2023 school year. She is currently pursuing a dual Master's of Special Education and Master's of Social Work degrees in Infant and Family Development and Early Intervention at Bank Street's Graduate School of Education and Hunter College Silverman School of Social Work. She comes to the program with over 10 years of experience working in the New York City Early Intervention and Preschool Committee on Preschool Special Education Programs, and is passionate about inclusivity in early childhood education for children with developmental variations. She holds a BA from Boston College in developmental psychology. So welcome to Synergia, Kelly. We're so happy that you could join us. We know that parents have plenty of questions, so I'll get to it. Just so everybody who's here, after the presenter concludes her presentation, we'll be having a Q&A session. And before you leave today, we will also have a poll. So if you guys could stay after the Q&A to fill that, that'd be greatly appreciated. So I'm going to hand it off to you now, Kelly, to get us started.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction, Tatiana. Just one second, getting my presentation pulled up. Thank you so much for joining us today, everybody. I'm going to give some overall information about the CPSC program and entering the process. A lot of the presentation will be provided verbally. So if at the end you have any general questions or any information that's unclear, please let me know and we can go over anything again. Also, I'm going to have Tatiana provide everybody with my contact information while we keep the Q&A portion to kind of general questions that anybody could benefit from. I'm happy to make myself available to any of you who have particular questions about your individual family or child situation that you'd like to have answered at another time. Okay. Switch screen. All right, everybody. So again, today we're going to talk about how to navigate the preschool special education system in New York City, which is a really complicated system. I know I always tell families that learning how to navigate these systems and even just learning the acronyms relating to this system is like learning a second language. It's something that as a professional, it took me many years of existing in the system to really understand the inner workings. And so I know it can be intimidating for a lot of families who are approaching this, either coming from early intervention or from a younger level of support, or who are really considering whether these are services that their child needs for the first time. So just know, it's not something you have to learn everything about today. It's something that you're going to get your feet wet in, and then you'll get better at advocating for your child and learning these systems as you spend more and more time with them. Just don't be afraid to reach out and ask people for help and to always be learning more information. So I just wanted to start by talking a little bit about child development and what might motivate a family to kind of approach the preschool special education system in the first place. So we understand that every child develops at their own pace, and that development is influenced by an interaction of internal and external factors for the child. So I put this little graphic here, just showing that, we expect that on their own, the child, has internal things going on, like their biology, their natural intrinsic motivators, any genetic predispositions to anything, and their internal experiences that are influenced by, the external world. So, how they're being parented or what their childcare situation might look like, any cultural values of the family, some of the other things there, any peers, siblings, the entire ecosystem kind of influences the pace of a child's development. So that being said, there are age ranges in which we expect certain developmental milestones to emerge. So for example, one concrete and common one that families might be familiar with is walking. We expect that a child will walk around 12 months of age, but there is a range in which we can see walking emerge, in which we would still consider it developmentally appropriate, from about 10 to 15 months. So what we're looking at is that the child is hitting their milestones, and that milestones are kind of accumulating. They're building new skills in a sequential order, and that they're hitting them within the age-appropriate range. So what we really want to motivate families, caregivers, and professionals to do is to monitor a child's development continually to make sure they're making progress in a timely way, or if they're not, or if there are concerns or potential red flags, that you are reaching out to get support in a timely way too, if needed. So that being said, in 2022, this past year, the American Academy of Pediatrics updated their guidelines to remove vague language that might encourage families to take a wait and see approach to their young child's emerging milestones. According to Harvard's Center for the Developing Child, approximately 2.6, about 3% of the general population of infants and toddlers are identified and begin receiving early intervention services to support their development before they're 3 years old. However, research indicates that as many as 13% of 3-year-olds have delays that would make them eligible for developmental support services, according to criteria commonly used by the states. So what that means is there's a 10% gap in the number of children who should be getting identified to receive services who are not getting identified before the age of 3. So what we really encourage families to do, if you have any doubts about your child's development and whether it's, occurring in a timely fashion in an age-appropriate manner, feel free and definitely be proactive about seeking help from a developmental professional. That can be your pediatrician, or you can go through any number of systems, the early intervention system, which I've already mentioned, which is the New York City Department of Health system that is for birth to 3 that provides developmental support services, or the CPSC system, which is Committee on Preschool Special Education. So here in New York City, every school district has a committee on preschool special education that is dedicated to providing evaluations and, if deemed necessary, ongoing support services to children between the ages of 3 and 5 who have suspected or diagnosed developmental disabilities. These services are provided at no out-of-pocket cost to families via the Department of Education. So CPSC is available here in New York City, but there are similar programs in every state and every district in the country under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Every student is entitled to a free and appropriate public education that emphasizes special education and related services designed to meet their unique needs and prepare them for further education, employment, and independent living. Since 1989, the federal government and New York State have provided funding for educational support services for preschoolers whose learning may be impacted by developmental delays or disabilities through their local school district.
Before we continue, is there possible you can fix your we're seeing the presenter window right now on the screen. I'm not sure if that's what you're seeing.
Sorry, I'm seeing my slides. Hold on. Okay. Is that better?
Yes, much better.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Okay, so if you have concerns about your child's development and you're thinking that perhaps the CPSE program might be an appropriate place to go, especially because their services are available at no out-of-pocket cost to your family, the next step would be to make a referral to the CPSE on your child's behalf. So as children develop at different rates, developmental delays may first become apparent at different stages, and your child may be referred to the Committee on Preschool Special Education from a number of different pathways. So again, as I mentioned previously, some children have identified developmental delays before age 3. They may have been born with a diagnosis that may be indicated that they might need some developmental support services and may be receiving early intervention services. If you are in the early intervention program from the time your child is 2.5, your early intervention service coordinator or your child's therapist should be speaking to you about the CPSE program and whether you feel that your child will need to continue services when they're 3. So that is one way that families begin to refer and access the CPSE program. Some children may attend a childcare program in which the early childhood professionals notice that the child is not hitting developmental milestones at the same pace as their peers. In that case, the early childhood professionals can recommend that the family make referral to the CPSE program. However, again, it is voluntary, so families can choose to honor that recommendation and complete the referral process, or they can decline it. It's always voluntary to families. Furthermore, parents and guardians can make referral to the CPSE program on their child's behalf at any point between the ages of 3 and 5 if they are concerned that their child's development is delayed. So children can begin receiving preschool special education services in the year in which they turn 3 years old. The exact date that your child can potentially start CPSE services is dependent on your child's date of birth. So again, there is an evaluations and referral process to get your child qualified for ongoing services through the CPSE program. And that can begin 120 days prior to their child's earliest date of eligibility for services. So if your child is born in the year 2020, they are potentially eligible for CPSE services beginning this year. If their birthday is between January 1st and June 30th, you could potentially have referred your child for evaluations and begin that process on or after October 4th of 2022. And services can start at any point on January 2nd or at any point thereafter in between January 2nd and June 30th if your child turns 3 in that time window. For children born in the latter half of the year, again, they can make referral and begin the evaluations process on or after April 2nd of this year, and services can potentially start anytime after July 1st this year. If you are the one who is making the referral to CPSE on your child's behalf, you must do so in writing via letter or email. You can also fax, but I would recommend letter or email because many of the DOE offices are still on a hybrid work from home in-person model. So while I know they do have fax numbers, I would say it's more reliable to write a letter or email. We can provide you with sample letters with the necessary information you might want to include in a referral for your child if you'd like. The Advocates for Children of New York also have a fantastic website with templates of letters that you can make if you want to make a referral on your child's behalf for CPSE services. So where does this referral go? So again, because I know there are these universal pre-K and pre-K3 initiatives, and there are some of you who may have like a zoned option for pre-K for your child. Usually when we think about zone schools, we think about that starting at the kindergarten level. So when families are thinking about, I may need to refer my child for these preschool special education services, but what is the office that collects that information and who is going to help me with this process? So CPSE is organized into regional offices based on school districts. So on the left here, I have a map of the 31 school districts in New York City. And they are organized into regions that are coupled school districts. So for example, one of the ones I deal with all the time is Region 9, because I work here in Manhattan. So that includes school districts 1, 2, and 4. So all of the families who live in those school districts would potentially prepare the letter to refer their child to the chairperson, whose name is Esther Morel, who's listed there, and you could potentially mail it to that address. If you are if you want to make referral for your child to CPSE, you can look up on the DOE's website a district map based on your address and confirm which school district that you live in. And then you can look up which regional CPSE office you would be making referral to. That is where you would send the referral. So if you are making a referral for your child to CPSE, it kicks off a timeline by which they have to complete the referral and evaluations process. It is a legal requirement for the DOE to honor this timeline. So we always encourage all families to keep records of all of their communication with the Department of Special Education. This would include turning on read receipts for any emails that you're sending to anyone at the Department of Education, or sending any letters to the DOE via certified letter or requesting a read receipt, or if you're faxing, getting fax confirmations. So from the time you as the family submit the CPSE referral for your child, whether you yourself are writing a letter and creating this referral, or if your child's in early intervention and their early intervention service coordinator assists you in making that referral, the Department of Education has 10 days to put together an initial CPSE packet that they have to either put in the mail or email to you. So when I was working in early intervention, if I assisted a family in making a referral to CPSE, I would put a reminder on my calendar for 2 weeks later. So I would give it that extra couple of days for the mail. And then I would check in with the family to make sure that they had received that packet before anything else could take place. So from the time that you receive that packet in the mail, a secondary timeline begins wherein there are 60 days, 60 calendar days in which your child's evaluations have to be conducted, completed, and submitted to the Department of Education. So as I mentioned, you'll get an initial CPSE packet for your child. They used to always come in the mail. Now some families receive them via email if you provide your email address to the DOE, again, because the Department of Education has a number of people who are still working remotely or who are partially remote. They do try and email a lot of documentation that used to be via mail only. So this initial CPSE packet will contain a welcome letter from your CPSE administrator, who is the official at the Committee on Preschool Special Education, who will be assigned to manage your child's case. Those CPSE administrators are assigned according to your school district and then alphabetically. So for District 3, for example, there may be 3 administrators who are handling all the children's cases, and those 3 administrators might split up which children's cases they're handling by what letter of the alphabet the child's last name begins with. So you'll get a welcome letter from that person, and likely it will name a clerical assistant who would be a person who helps with paperwork who you could communicate with as well. The packet will contain a copy of your parental rights and your procedural safeguards in CPSE, which is something we're going to talk about a lot in this presentation, but it's something you should really focus on familiarizing yourself with so that you understand what you're guaranteed in this program and what your child's rights are. The packet will also contain a blank template of a medical form. This is a standard Department of Health or Department of Education medical form that you have to have your child's pediatrician fill out to indicate your child's ability to be evaluated for this program. This is a requirement of this process. So my recommendation to families is that when you get the CPSE packet, just send that medical form straight to your doctor's office. Every pediatrician's office is familiar with them, and give them plenty of time to get that form done and to send it back to you so that it can be included as part of this initial evaluations process. The packet will also include a written list of CPSE evaluation sites in New York City. So you're going to have to select, and it is your right as a parent to select the agency that provides your child's evaluations to be determined eligible for this program. So typically, there are no employees of the DOE who are directly providing evaluations to children for CPSE. It's subcontracted out through private agencies that do provide evaluations. On a personal note, I've noticed many times in the past that when families receive this list of evaluation sites, it's very out of date. In fact, for a long time, they were sending one that had an agency that I know was shut down because of fraud, and they were still sending the name of that agency to families who are approaching CPSE. So generally, I don't recommend that families, rely on that hard copy list. There's a more up-to-date one that you can find online if you Google CPSE evaluation sites, New York City. Or if your child is in early intervention, I highly recommend speaking to your service coordinator or to your child's therapist about CPSE evaluation sites that they might recommend. Definitely reach out and ask for recommendations and for help on finding a CPSE evaluation provider site. Finally, this packet will also include, and this is the most important document in the packet, a consent for evaluation form, which is called a C1P form. It will say that in the upper right-hand corner of the form. That is the form which needs to be in your hands for your child's first CPSE evaluation to take place. By signing that form, you are giving your informed consent saying, yes, I want my child to go through the eligibility process to potentially be determined eligible for preschool special education services through the Department of Education. You can always revoke your consent if you change your mind at any point during the CPSE evaluations process, because again, this is a totally voluntary program. But the evaluators who will come see your child need to have that form in hand to be able to render any evaluations to your child. So some families will get this packet, they might forget where they put it, they might not know which form is the C1P form, and then it'll be the date of their child's initial evaluation. And the evaluator will come and ask for this form and say, I need your signed consent to be able to conduct the evaluation. And if the family says, oh, I don't know where I put it, the evaluation cannot go ahead. So as a service coordinator, I would always tell families, don't fill it out yet. Don't put anything on that form. Stick it to your fridge, put it somewhere safe, maybe take a picture of it on your phone, do something with it where you have a copy that you won't lose. And then the first day of that evaluation, make sure you have it on hand. Again, if your child is in the early intervention program at this time and you're requesting the CPSE packet, as soon as you get it, whether you get it as an email with all of these documents attached, or if it comes in the mail, contact your early intervention service coordinator right away to tell them that you have it. So the next thing that you're going to do once you have that packet in your hands or in your email inbox is to select the CPSE evaluation site that will provide your child's evaluations. Again, it is your right as a parent to select the evaluation site that is rendering your child's evaluations. And families will say to me all the time, I've never heard of any of these private agencies. How do I select the one that I want to have evaluate my child? Many people's first impulse is to look at what is closest to their home address, when in fact, this usually doesn't matter. The important things to consider when you're contemplating which CPSE evaluation site to have your child evaluated through is the location you would like the evaluations to take place, and there are several options. Since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, CPSE evaluations have been able to be conducted virtually. This is still an option for a lot of families, and in some ways can help facilitate the scheduling. It's a lot easier to get evaluations done when you can schedule at your ease and with the ease of the evaluator, and they don't have to worry about traveling. That being said, generally, in my opinion, I don't frequently recommend virtual evaluations just because it can be hard to understand the nuance of what's going on with a young child when you're trying to get them to know them through the screen. So if it's within your means and it feels safe for your family and your child to try and arrange evaluations in person, I would contact evaluation sites and specify that you prefer to have in-person evaluations. If evaluations are going to take place in person, they can take place either at your home or at your child's school if your child is in a preschool or a childcare setting. Obviously, you'll see different behaviors from a child in those two settings, but the CPSE program aims to provide support services that a child needs for their education in the classroom. So if they can provide evaluations at school, they always try to do so. Finally, there are some CPSE evaluation sites that have offices where you can bring your child in for evaluations. That's a little bit more rare than it used to be at the start of my career, but I do know a few, especially I can think of one in particular in Queens that do still have an evaluation site where you can bring your child in to meet with the professionals. If that is what's easiest for them for scheduling, or if you think that might help see some of your child's particular needs to have them in an alternate setting as opposed to your home, that can be helpful as well. So think about where you want those evaluations to take place. I would also encourage that you think about your child's home languages and the languages to which they are frequently exposed. It is a Department of Education requirement that every child be evaluated for CPSE in all of the languages to which they are regularly exposed. So let's say you are an English-speaking family and you have a nanny who speaks Spanish. If the nanny is speaking Spanish to your child all day, every day while they're at home, then your child must be evaluated bilingually in English and Spanish. I have had families, I once had a family who was from Norway and spoke a very specific dialect of Norwegian. The Department of Education required that we find evaluations that could be provided bilingually in English and this dialect of Norwegian. It is a law, it is a requirement, you cannot opt out of it. So as your child is going through this evaluations process, you want to take a look on that list of evaluation sites, or as you're contacting evaluation sites, at what languages they might have translation for, or you may need to arrange an alternate person who's a non-relative of your child to provide translation for your child's evaluations. In that example I mentioned where the family spoke the very rare dialect of Norwegian, I worked with the family to find a church where there was a member of the community who spoke that dialect of Norwegian who volunteered their time to translate the child's evaluations. Can be very tricky. So if you are a bilingual family or a multilingual family, I would encourage you to really start looking and thinking about your child's CPSE evaluation site very far in advance so that you can make these arrangements if necessary. The DOE will not permit evaluations to go forward if you have disclosed to them that your child is a multilingual learner. One other thing to consider as you're comparing evaluation sites for your child is a potential waiting list. So a lot of evaluation sites get a lot of requests from families who have referred their child and need an evaluation site. So sometimes you may contact an agency to provide your child's evaluations, and they may say, our next availability, today's February 2nd, our next availability is not till June. If your child is turning 3 in July, that may not be soon enough to get all of the evaluations done with adequate time to get your child's services in place before their 3rd birthday. So always ask if there's a waiting list, and I prioritize frequently having the evaluations take place sooner rather than later so that you know you're giving enough time for everything to get done in the DOE's required 60-day window from when evaluations begin. So the CPSE evaluations are provided in a multidisciplinary format. What that means is that your child will be evaluated by at least 2 developmental professionals, if not more, in order to look at all of their areas of development holistically. So every child who comes through the DOE's CPSE evaluations process will receive a psychological education. That is the first evaluation that will be scheduled for your child. It must take place first before any other evaluations can proceed. So that person is going to look at all of your child's areas of development with particular focus on their cognition, their social emotional skills, their behaviors, and their self-care and adaptive skills, how well they're able to meet their own needs. So the psychologist will be the person who contacts you first to set up that schedule, and the person who you will likely hand off that consent form to. Once they have provided their evaluation, they make a recommendation back to the Department of Education for the rest of the evaluations that the child will receive. Those must be approved in order for them to go forward. So for example, if you're currently in early intervention and your child is receiving physical therapy, you would make a referral to CPSE, you'd meet this psychologist, and then you'd report, my child is receiving physical therapy at this time. They would write that in their recommendation and then send it to the DOE, who would then give permission for a PT evaluation to go forward. I recommend that families talk to the psychologist about any new concerns or evaluations you feel like your child needs. Really give your opinions about things you're concerned about, whether or not your child has a diagnosis or a known delay in that area or not. So let's say in that example I provided, your child is getting physical therapy, but now that they're turning 3, you're concerned about their speech as well. Even if they've never been evaluated for speech in the past, they're not receiving that service, you can tell the evaluator, I'm concerned about this, and they could potentially help you make recommendation for that additional evaluation if needed. In my experience, it's much easier to get these evaluations provided up front when the child initially presents to the CPSE evaluations program, as opposed to having your child qualify in one area and then requesting additional evaluations on the back end. So I highly recommend that you're just really upfront and you think really holistically about your child as a whole person and anything that might be an area of developmental delay. One of the other requirements of the CPSE evaluations process is an educational evaluation. So again, this program is focused on what services or supports your child may need to be successful as a preschool student in a classroom setting. That's their primary focus. Of course, there are other services they can provide or services that might be provided outside of school, other areas of development that might not be super focused on learning and cognition. However, every child does have to have an educational evaluation, which includes a classroom observation component if your child is in a daycare or preschool setting. So that is a requirement. If you disclose to the DOE that your child is in a daycare setting, then they have to have this educational evaluator come observe them in the classroom to give a sense for what their needs look like in the classroom. And of course, there are a number of individual and specialized evaluations that can be provided as needed. So the 2 abbreviations I list here, an FVA is a functional vision assessment. So if your child has known visual impairment or blindness, you can request a vision evaluation that can determine how the classroom could be optimized to support your child's learning needs with relation to their vision, or an AAC evaluation, which stands for an augmentative and assistive communication evaluation. So that might look at if your child has some level of hearing loss or is deaf, what their needs might look like in order to be able to hear in the classroom. So those are some additional evaluations that might be part of the picture for some children. I always give the families the advice to be very proactive about scheduling these evaluations. Again, the Department of Education is trying to follow a 60-day timeline to get all of the evaluations conducted, all of the reports written, and all of the information submitted to you and to your child's school district. So if you're waiting 10 business days in between when the evaluator calls you and when you call back to set up a schedule, you could really be pushing that timeline along and you could delay the start of services for your child inadvertently. So just prioritize these scheduling things as much as you can. Once the evaluation sessions for your child have all been provided, the evaluators who met with your family are going to write up evaluation reports that are pretty in-depth, and they are going to finalize all of those reports. They'll all be reviewed and submitted by the evaluation agency in a complete packet. They are typically mailed out to you as the family and to your child's school district, to the CPSE administrator on the same day. So the evaluations will be sent out and you'll get a hard copy in the mail and or an email copy in PDF of all the reports that were rendered for your child. It's really important to read all of the reports. I know sometimes the language can be confusing, or sometimes there might be information you don't agree with, or information that might be hard to read. I mean, for some children and some families, I know emotionally it's not easy to hear that your child may have a developmental delay or a very significant level of need in one area or another. But I encourage families to really familiarize themselves with how their child did in the evaluations, especially where they scored as compared to their age-matched peers on some of the standardized test instruments used in the evaluations. If there's anything you don't understand or anything you have questions about, follow up with the CPSE evaluations agency to ask them these questions. It is your right as a family to understand the contents of your child's CPSE evaluations. You're not burdening anybody. It's their responsibility to you to make sure that somebody contacts you, that you've received the evaluations and that you understand what was written about your child. So the goal here is that the evaluations, they're a snapshot of what your child looked like on the particular day they met the evaluator, but the basis for your child's determination for eligibility is those evaluation reports. You have a right to know what those say. The CPSE administrator will read them and will receive them and will be reading them as well. Once they receive them, they will follow up with you to ensure that an initial IEP meeting is scheduled for your child within 60 days of when you first signed off on that C1P form, that consent for evaluation. So usually it'll take, over a month and a half to get all of the various evaluations done for the child, get the reports written, and get these things sent out. Then once the DOE administrator has received the reports, they'll contact you and they'll put that meeting on the calendar to honor that 60-day timeline. Again, I would recommend that when you initially refer your child, that you are making note of when 60 days from referral would be. Sometimes, everybody gets busy, especially in the public school system. All of our plates are so full with the number of families and children needing our supports. The DOE can fall behind on things, but you still have that legal right to have that meeting within 60 days of when you made referral, as long as you're honoring the timeline on your end. So I always tell families, don't be afraid to be annoying. The squeaky wheel gets the oil. If you are annoying and you're following up, they're going to honor your 60-day timeline. So if you notice, hey, it's been like 45, 50 days, there's only 10 days left and I haven't heard from anybody about getting this meeting on the calendar, make some calls. You can contact the CPSE administrator at the number they provide you in your welcome packet to CPSE, or contact the agency that provided your evaluations, because they're aware of the 60-day timeline and they should be helping to advocate on your child's behalf as well. So, qualification criteria. How do you know if your child has qualified for CPSE services based on these evaluations? Again, for those of you who participate in early intervention, this is similar qualification criteria to early intervention, so it should be familiar. Your child must be 33% delayed, which is 2 standard deviations in one area of development, or 25% or more delayed, which is 1.5 standard deviations in 2 or more areas of development, according to their evaluation results, in order to qualify for ongoing CPSE services. So I've included a picture of the bell curve here so we can understand these, like 33% delay and the 2 standard deviations piece. That center there is what we would consider the range of typical development. So any child who's in that center 66% of a little bit above average, slightly behind, is considered typically developing. So that can be hard for families to read sometimes, like, hey, I feel like my child is really having trouble with their speech. They seem behind their friends, but because they're only slightly behind, they don't technically qualify for these services. And that can be part of the puzzle. That can be true. So your child needs to be demonstrating a significant delay that will impact their learning. So as these evaluations are taking place, the evaluators will be running standardized testing instruments so they can come up with scores that fit into this percentage of delay profile. And they'll also be giving their clinical opinion, which means a speech evaluator might meet your child and say, okay, I see that this child is scoring that they're only slightly delayed in their speech. However, given all of my years of experience as a speech therapist, I know that if this child does not get ongoing speech therapy, they're not going to be able to make meaningful progress as a preschool student next year. Then they can recommend services based on their opinion that your child has this significant level of delay. This is the basis through which services will be determined. So again, what's written in these evaluation reports is the number one most important thing that's going to determine whether your child qualifies to get ongoing services from the CPSE. That includes, even if you have medical documentation that your child has a diagnosis, if you have additional evaluations from outside medical professionals or developmental professionals, or if you have, your own insights as a parent, you're saying, no, I really feel like he needs this. Number one is going to be how your child scores on these evaluations. All of that additional information is supplementary and supportive, and it's important, but this is the primary means by which they'll determine if your child qualifies. These are the developmental domains that preschool special education is looking at. They're the same for early intervention, but again, they're the child's cognitive development, so their thinking and learning skills. This includes their play skills, and how well that your child is able to acquire new knowledge and skills. Their communication skills, their ability to understand and use language. This includes speech as well as sign language or gesture. It can include a number of other means of communication. So how well they understand things, how well they are able to express themselves. Their physical and motor development. So again, that can include vision and hearing, but it can also include large body movements and small body movements, fine motor and gross motor skills. So how they're able to navigate the classroom environment, the playground, get around with their friends, as well as pre-writing, ability to hold a pen or a pencil and begin to color, make pre-writing strokes. Their social emotional skills, how well they're able to stay regulated through the day, and to get along with others in the classroom, adults and children, as well as any behaviors that might come up that might present obstacles to learning for your child. And their adaptive and self-care skills. So how well they're able to help meet their own needs. You know, can they take their coat off by themselves and hang it up? Can they feed themselves with utensils at meal times? Can they eat independently at school, or do they need an adult with them? All of these things are part of the picture of what your child needs to be a successful preschool student. So once you have an assessment of how your child is doing in all of those areas of development via this multidisciplinary CPSE evaluation, you're going to be called for an initial IEP meeting. Again, an IEP stands for an individualized education plan. That is the legal document that the Department of Education will put together on your child's behalf in order to state their current levels of function, form goals for what your child needs, in order to be successful in the classroom and at school, form criteria by which they're going to measure whether your child is meeting those goals with their support services, and it will mandate exactly what services your child is entitled to receive. So if your child is evaluated for CPSE, the DOE will schedule a meeting either way, whether or not they are meeting these qualification criteria we talked about. So it's possible that you could be scheduled to go in for a meeting to review these evaluations, and the DOE will say, I'm sorry, your child didn't qualify. Typically, if you've already received and read the reports and you know your child's not going to qualify, and you say, okay, I'm glad I have this information, I don't really feel the need to continue going about this process to try and get support services from preschool, you can decline the meeting, and likely the evaluation agency will advise you to do that. But if your child is qualifying, you will be called in for this IEP meeting. What are the support services that you can get through the CPSE program? We talk about in special education broadly, both in CPSE and in K through 12, what we call the least restrictive environment. This is a legal principle that is part of IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. That's a federal law, stating that students with disabilities have a fundamental right to receive their special education supports in a classroom and setting that to the maximum extent appropriate includes students without disabilities. So what that means for your preschooler practically is to the greatest extent that they can support your child so that they can make meaningful progress towards their education, but still be with typically developing peers, that's what they want to do. So based on the results of your evaluation, when you go for that IEP meeting, there's a continuum of possible services that they will talk about recommending for your child. In order from least restrictive to most restrictive, what your child might be eligible for are related services only, special education itinerant teaching services, an integrated class setting, or a special class setting. Related services only. The majority of children receiving CPSE services are receiving related services only. So these would include physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapy. Those are the most common services. Can include counseling as well, which is what I do here at New York Center for Child Development. Again, functional vision therapy, any assistive technologies, if your child needs a mobility device or some sort of a hearing support system, closed captioning system, anything like that, that would fall under related services or an assistive technology. And again, these services can be provided to your student as push-in services at school, or you can bring your child to another location after school. Furthermore, if your child is not going to preschool, that is an option. You can potentially qualify for these support services when your child is 3, even if you aren't ready to start sending your child to school yet. These services can be provided at a sensory gym or a speech therapy clinician's office. You can bring your child to go get these services at another location that accepts contracts from the DOE to pay for these services. So again, the majority of students who come to CPSE are receiving related services only. This might be, okay, this might be where I stop sharing and start speaking to you guys more plainly. So the next level of services from there is SEIT services, which stands for Special Education Itinerant Teaching. What that looks like is that it's a special education teacher who travels throughout their day to see students in educational settings and general education settings. So if your preschooler is attending a neighborhood preschool program that you have privately enrolled them in, but there are some routines of the day that might be challenging for your child based on their developmental needs. Your child could be assigned a special education itinerant teacher, a SEIT, to come and sit with your child during those routines of the day that are challenging and to help them get through and navigate those routines with a little bit of support. The model of SEIT is to serve as a scaffold for your child. So again, this adult is not, taking your child away from the classroom activity or giving them their own lesson that's separate from what they're learning in the general education environment. They're providing a support for your child so that they can participate fully in the classroom activity at hand. That being said, if your child is recommended for SEIT support services, the intention and the model is not for it to be somebody who is with your child all day while they are at school. Frequently, what will happen is when you go for your IEP meeting, the CPSE administrator will ask you, what is the total number of hours per week that your child goes to preschool? So if your child is in school 3 hours a day from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. for 5 days a week, that's 15 hours a week. Then they will recommend the SEIT come see your child for a total of 5 hours a week, for example. So there's 1 hour of the day that might be challenging for your child, but they can usually navigate the classroom setting independently. Okay, the SEIT will come once a day for an hour and help them with that routine that's challenging. So a lot of families, might hear about SEIT as a support service and say, that sounds ideal. That's what I want, someone just to help a little bit when my child needs it. But that person is not meant to be there full day while your child's at school. It's really just a snapshot of, the routines that are tough and helping them build strategies to be more independent. The point of a SEIT is that if your child receives that service, hopefully eventually they will independently learn those skills in order to be able to navigate the day in a general education setting independently without the SEIT. So the idea is that eventually your child will not need that person in a general ed classroom anymore at some point in their educational career.
Ellie, before we continue, we do have a question in the Q&A. They comment, my son aged out of EI in December, and we haven't been able to find a 12-to-1-to-2 seat for him yet. So he's currently at home receiving no services at all. Do I have the option of requesting services to be delivered at home or a separate location? His IEP states speech therapy, occupational therapy, and physical therapy multiple times a week in a 12-to-1-to-2 class, but he's currently getting nothing.
That's a great question. And that's something that a lot of families go through when they have December age outs. So again, most children who are entering the preschool special education program qualify at any point during the year. And typically the DOE will try and have them start their services in September at the start of the school year, because we are a DOE program. So CPSE typically starts in September. For children who are born between September and December, they have the option to remain in early intervention through the end of December and then join CPSE in January, which is a strong option for a lot of families because they like their early intervention services and they feel well supported by their early intervention providers. However, when that happens, that means you're joining the academic year midway through progress. So what that might mean is that a lot of schools that would offer special classes in a ratio of 12 to 1 to 2. So for any families who aren't familiar, if your child is recommended for a special class, they are recommended in a certain ratio of students to adults to assistants in the classroom. So in this example, the child is recommended for a 12 to 1 to 2. That's 12 students, 1 lead teacher, and 2 assistant teachers in that classroom. So in that situation, what may have happened is that your child was recommended for that setting, but you can't find a school that has an open seat in their classroom in January. That is very commonplace. The Department of Education gives themselves a window from when your child's IEP begins, by when they are legally responsible to give your child the support services. That is 60 school days. So it's not calendar days, it's 60 school days. So if your child aged out in December, that means the first day of their IEP would have been January 2nd, which means you have to count off 60 days on the academic Department of Education calendar in New York City before the DOE even considers themselves late to providing your child services. So they have the right to take 60 days to look and look and look. I mean, you're going to be in mid-March, maybe April, before the DOE considers it like an emergency where they're not meeting their legal obligations to provide your child services. So you are in a tough spot there. And I have a lot of compassion and empathy for being there because I know a lot of families that have been there in the past. Again, that is a situation where I would say, don't be afraid to be annoying. Everybody at the DOE, we're all very busy. Everybody in the CPSE program is busy. The last thing they want is to hear from you every single day. So if you send them an email every day, call them. I know it puts a lot of work on you, and I don't, I'm not blind to that, there are a lot of families and a lot of people who don't have the time and the resources to dedicate to following up, but the squeaky wheel does get the oil. So I would just continue following up, say that you're happy to go tour any school options they suggest for your child. Are there any seats available? Hi, just checking in again, wondering what the status is of, my child's placement in this 12 to 1 to 2. When can I expect to hear about an available seat? And continue making those inquiries. I would definitely recommend that you physically count 60 school days to figure out what that cutoff date is. By that 60th day, if your child is still not receiving services, you can approach your child's CPSE administrator about making arrangements for an alternative plan because a seat cannot be found for your child. You could probably bring that up sooner than 60 days if you're really concerned that your child's not getting services, but I don't think they would legally have to, they would not have any legal obligation to uphold giving your child those supplemental services if they were still looking for a 12 to 1 to 2. Furthermore, this is just broad advice that I would give to all families in New York City. It's really important, and it can be life-changing to network with other families whose children have, some sort of developmental variation and are receiving these type of services. You can look online for various parenting groups where parents will share information. And I find that a lot of families find good information and get recommendations for schools and hear about things they might be interested through these parenting groups. I don't know what borough you are in, but there's one in particular I'm aware of, that's Manhattan Special Needs Parents. That's a great group. It's a private group. You have to ask to be a member. But if you join, families are really free about sharing information. And many families have contacted me professionally saying they got my information from that group. So I would go there as well. And additionally, there is also, this is general good advice too, there is an Advocates for Children New York City. That is an organization that has a hotline that runs between, I believe, 8 a.m. and 4 p.m., 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday, where anybody can call and explain whatever their current issue is with the Department of Education. And you can be assigned an advocate who can try and help you to troubleshoot your particular issue for your child. So I would recommend calling Advocates for Children as well. They may not be able to take on like a legal role in your child's particular case, but they could potentially help troubleshoot this situation and give you some good advice that's specific to your child as well. Okay. So again, if we're talking about the continuum of CPSE services, related services only, special education, itinerant teaching, the next setting that you might be looking at if your child needs something more supportive than being in a general education service setting with those support services, related services, and or SEAD services would be something we call an integrated class setting. or an ICT, which is integrated co-teach. So an integrated class is a terrific model of education where about half the students are students who have IEPs and are getting preschool support services, and half the students are typically developing and are hitting their milestones at an age appropriate range. Usually it's 50-50, some classrooms it might be 60-40, just depending on the ratio. And the model of that classroom is that you have a teacher who is duly certified in special education or general education, or some classrooms have two teachers, one special educator, one general educator, who are providing the instruction in a way that's tailored to support the needs of the students in the classroom who have IEPs. These classrooms are generally smaller than most public education classrooms. So if you were going to a UPK3, there might be 25 children in that room, 20 children in that room. An integrated class might have 18 or 16 students. So it's smaller in general. And again, about half and half are children with special needs versus children who are typically developing. If your child is in an integrated an ICT setting, an integrated class setting, and they are also recommended for related services like PT, OT, speech, anything we talked about, those therapies would be provided by school staff. So any integrated class would have a school PT, OT, speech, barring any staffing issues where you might have to go outside the school, and all of the services for your child would be provided at school, potentially as push-in or pull-out sessions, depending on how it is written into your child's IEP. I've worked in an integrated co-teach setting before. I think those are a fantastic model for the students who are able to make meaningful academic progress with that level of support. And I really do think that as far as special education, a lot of the future of special education is moving theoretically in an integrated class direction. Finally, the kind of more restrictive environments we would talk about would be what's called a special class setting, which is, as we mentioned in that prior example, a classroom where all of the students have IEPs and are receiving some level of educational and developmental support services. So a 12 would be the largest class you could get in a special class setting. Again, that would be a ratio of 12 students, one lead teacher and two teaching assistants, or sometimes it can be 3 teaching assistants. It depends on the school and the class. You will sometimes see classrooms of 10 students, 1 teacher, 2 assistants, 8 students, or 6 students. The smallest possible class setting that is offered at the preschool level is a classroom of 6. And that would be, again, 6 students, 1 lead teacher, 2 assistants. So it's a small ratio of adults to children for children who might need a lot of supports. This school that I teach at now at New York Center for Child Development, all of the classrooms here are self-contained classrooms of 8 or 12. So there are a lot of special education preschools, such as this one, where their entire population is children who are in the CPSE program receiving these types of support services. If you go forth with your IEP meeting and your child is recommended for an integrated class setting or for a self-contained class setting, it is the obligation and the responsibility of your child's CPSE administrator to find and help your child be placed in a CPSE program. So a lot of families will say, I don't really know any special ed preschools. How do I know where my child's going to go to school if they are recommended for a classroom setting such as this? In your IEP meeting, the administrator should make recommendations for some schools that you can go on tours to look at to see if you feel it would be a good fit for your child. These schools are typically not based on zone. So if you live on the Upper West Side, your child could be recommended to attend a special education preschool on the Upper East Side and could receive transportation services. If your child is in an integrated setting or a special class setting and not at a neighborhood preschool that you privately enroll them in, they could be eligible for transportation services, meaning you would get a school bus that would potentially come and pick up your child at your home at the curbside in front of your building and would take the child to school. So that is a service that can be written into your child's IEP as well. So I know we've talked a lot about services that are available in evaluations, and I've said the word IEP a lot and talked about the IEP meeting, but we haven't really spoken about how you might want to prepare for that as a parent. And I know that that can be really intimidating to think about going for that meeting for your child and to want to make sure that you're doing right by them and getting them all the supports that they need. Again, an IEP is an individualized education plan. It's a legal document that is formed at that meeting in collaboration between the family, the CPSE administrator, who again is the Department of Education's representative, who is assigned to help your child get the services to which they are entitled. And again, those are usually organized first by school district and then alphabetically. So theoretically, I'm Kelly Moen, I'm your administrator. I may be working in District 3 and handling all the cases of children whose last names begin with the letters A through G, for example. That's an example. I don't work for the DOE. But so you'll meet with, it'll be you as the parent or guardian, your CPSE administrator. You have the right to have a representative from the CPSE evaluations agency that evaluated your child to participate in that meeting. That person's responsibility will be to express how your child performed on the evaluations that their agency provided to your child, and to discuss in detail, your child's particular strengths and their areas of need according to their evaluation findings. If your child is in early intervention, your service coordinator can be invited to that meeting as well. There is a place on the early intervention to CPSC referral form where you can sign off on your consent to have your service coordinator invited to that meeting. If your child is in early intervention, you can potentially extend your early intervention services beyond your child's 3rd birthday through September or through December, as we mentioned, in order to continue services until your child can start CPSE and timing with the beginning or the middle of the school year. If you are going to take that extension, it is helpful to have your early intervention service coordinator attend that CPSE meeting with your family. After that, you can invite anyone you choose to the CPSE meeting for your child. So if you have a nanny, or if you have a family member who's a primary caregiver for your child during the day while you go to work, it might be helpful to have that person attend. If your child's in a daycare or a preschool setting, you might want to ask if the teacher of your child's daycare can be dialed in via phone to participate in that meeting. That's totally appropriate. Your child gets EI services, any of their early intervention therapists may want to be dialed in or join you in the meeting if they have availability to do that. Anyone who you feel will help you to convey what your child's needs are and to advocate for what's best for your child for preschool, you are welcome to invite them to join the meeting. For some families where they have concerns about what their child's needs might look like, there are families who pursue educational legal consultation. And so sometimes families will invite an educational lawyer to participate in that meeting as well. That is completely within your rights and your boundaries as well. The assemblage of people who attend that meeting are called the IEP meeting team, and it is their job together to craft the IEP for the child. When you go to that meeting, the evaluations representative who's responsible for understanding and interpreting how your child did on their CPSE evaluations will create a draft IEP to bring and to send to the CPSE administrator in advance, where there's information about how your child performed on those evaluations pre-populated into this form that the CPSE administrator is going to look at. So you'll have brief summaries about every area of development for how your child performed on their evaluations. You'll have demographic information, basic things, your child's name, their date of birth, your address, your phone number, your name as their parent. And then the CPSE evaluations team will have recommended some goals that will potentially be included. So in every area where your child is getting support services, there will be a functional outcome, which is a larger overarching goal for what you expect your child to accomplish in the next year with the support of their preschool special education services. These goals have to be formatted in a very specific way. They have to be measurable, they have to be timed. So for example, if we're talking about a gross motor goal and your child's receiving physical therapy services, it might say, Kelly will walk up and down the stairs with a 2-foot alternating gait pattern in between transitions between the classroom and other school activities, 3 out of 5 attempts, meaning like your child will be able to demonstrate this skill in a measurable number of attempts. And then it will discuss how often progress will be monitored for your child. Most of the time it will say quarterly because your child's CPSE providers will be writing quarterly reports, measuring their progress and talking about how they are doing. So first you will have demographic information, then you will have how your child's currently performing according to their CPSE evaluations. Then you will have functional outcomes and the short-term objectives underneath them to say what your child needs to meet these goals. So if the goal is about your child climbing stairs, there might be smaller objectives that are about strengthening or about coordination, something like that. What are the steps that are needed in order to be able to, for your child to accomplish those goals? As the parent, you have the right to give your input into these goals. They'll be recommended, but you are allowed to agree with them or to disagree with them. Really feel free to give your opinions about whether you think the particular goals are relevant. I know sometimes that as the Department of Education administrator and your CPSE evaluations representative are going through all the things that they recommend, you may be sitting there as the caregiver saying, okay, well, these people are the experts. If this is what they are saying my child should be doing, then this is what my child should be doing. If it's not a priority to you, you can say so. If it's something your child can already do, we can strike it from the IEP. The goals should be functional and they should be appropriate for your child, and they should be something that's measurable and understandable for you as the parent. Finally, if there's any other particular accommodations or assistive technology that your child needs, again, we were mentioning before, children with visual impairments, if your child needs to be positioned a certain way in the classroom to be able to see, that could be an accommodation listed in your child's IEP. Or if your child needs to be using, a closed captioning system to be able to understand what's being said, something like that, that could be written into the IEP as well. And finally, transportation. So again, if your child is recommended to attend a CPSE program that is far away, a certain distance away from your home address, I think it's a half mile or 10 blocks maybe, then your child would be entitled to transportation services, which would be written into your IEP. A quick note about transportation services: if your child is recommended for them, the DOE is allowed to keep your child on the bus for up to 90 minutes each way. And I know when you're talking about sending a 3-year-old to preschool, that sounds like a very long amount of time before getting to school in the morning. It is possible that the DOE can write in limited time as a recommendation for the child based on their particular developmental needs. If that's something you want to talk about, definitely bring that up. Ask a lot of questions about the transportation. The administrator may not know the particulars of the bus company that might be contracted for your child's school. A lot of it is handled by another office called the Office of Pupil Transport, or OPT. However, if it's written into your IEP that your child has to be on a bus with air conditioning or on a bus with limited time for their route, then it is something legally that the DOE and OPT have to honor. So if you have concerns about things like that, make sure you are voicing them, make sure you understand why they might be appropriate for your child's particular needs. Like, my child gets car sick because he has sensory processing needs, he needs limited time on the bus. That's valid. Bring it up in your IEP meeting.
And Kelly, before we continue, we do have a question since we were talking about accommodation. So Ms. Elizabeth's, her question is, will CPSE programs administer medicine or tube feeds to children?
Sure, that's a great question too. So it really depends on the CPSE program. There are some programs that are for children who have complex medical needs that will have a staff nurse, or who might do feeding with a nurse if that is something that your child needs. It would be particular to the school. So if that's something that your child needs, I would recommend that you, in your IEP meeting, talk to your administrator about that so that it can be written into the IEP. And you would have to find a school that does have a nurse or whatever the level of medical assistant would be who could administer the tube feeding. There are a couple schools, one I can think of in particular called Blythedale. I think they're technically outside of New York City. They're like just up in Westchester. But there are some schools that serve complex medical need populations. So every student who attends the school attends in a therapeutic setting that does have medical support staff, in case there are children who have, feeding needs, like you mentioned, or complex seizure disorders where they need medical staff on hand, there are programs that exist for that as well. Great question. Not every school, though, has a school nurse. For example, our school does not have a nurse on staff. So it's an important question to ask as schools are being recommended to you. So in your IEP meeting, when the administrator is saying, I want you to look at X, Y, and Z schools, make sure that they're sending you to look at ones that have a nurse or supportive staffing that could administer tube feedings. Okay, so as you're preparing for your IEP meeting, I can send along another resource that I think is really helpful. The Advocates for Children have a template form. That's what to do to prepare for your IEP meeting. Really think about in advance, again, who you want to invite, because you're entitled to invite anyone you'd like to come with you. And think about forming a picture in your mind of your child as a person. Form a narrative of what you want your child's experience at school to look like. When you sit down for that initial IEP meeting with your CPSE administrator, they will explain to you your parental rights again. The CPSE evaluations coordinator will explain how your child performed on the evaluations. And you should be invited as the parent or the guardian or the caregiver to share what your impressions are of your child and what you feel your child needs. So make sure that in advance you're sitting down, you're taking stock of, and I will tell families the night before, just write down some bullet points, put a note in your phone, whatever feels meaningful to you and helpful to you. What are my child's strengths? What are the times of the day that go really well for my family? What are my favorite routines to share with my child? Talk about those first. Then say, okay, where are some areas that I see the need? It's really hard to get out the door in the morning. Transitions are hard. Getting ready to go somewhere is hard. How might that impact them when they're in a classroom setting, in a group setting? Write out things like that where it might be an area of need. And then what would I like to see my child doing in school this time next year, or, in the next year of progress? What are the most important things to me that I want to see my child doing? Is it beginning to build peer relationships? Is it, learning how to attend to classroom routines and sit at a chair? That's a huge part of what we do here at school. It's a child's, for many children, it's their first experience in a school setting, and they're not used to having to sit for an entire activity in a chair. These are some things you might want to think about. What do I want my child to get for next year? Furthermore, if your child is in a preschool setting now or is getting early intervention support services, talk to the existing team that you have for your child. Talk to the professionals who know them, whether that's daycare professionals, whether it's early intervention people, your friends and family, anyone who has a good sense of who your child is, and get an idea of what they think that your child might need, or what are some particular areas of strength for your child as well. Put together this information, and then I try to tell parents and encourage them as much as possible. It's hard for anybody to predict what a child is going to need in the next year, especially when a child's 3 years old. A year of their life is 1/3 of their life. So even for us early childhood professionals whose responsibility it is to, muddle through this nuance and say, okay, what is going to be the best plan for this child? We are making an informed judgment call. There's no perfect roadmap to what a specific child needs based on their profile. So come up with an idea, have a narrative in your head, and then start to think of, what it would be a hard no for you. What are some supports you think your child might need? It's important to remember going into the IEP meeting that every service is voluntary, every setting is voluntary. Nobody, not the CPSE administrator, not the evaluations coordinator, nobody can authorize your child to attend a program or to get CPSE support services that you are not in agreement with. You are the expert in your child. Legally, you are the one who has to sign off on any services that are in place for your child. So let's say hypothetically, you go for that CPSE meeting, you've thought really carefully and talked to a lot of people about what your child's needs are, and you feel really determined that your child would do best and could make meaningful academic progress in an integrated co-teach setting. So a setting with general education and special education and a mixed population of typically developing and special education students. If you go into that meeting and your administrator is saying, no, I don't agree. I really feel like your child needs to be in a smaller classroom, but that's not what you think your child needs to succeed, you have the final say. You are the parent. It is up to you. You can disagree with any recommendations, that are made for your child, and you can request further follow-up. You have the right to impartial hearing, which would be a sit down, or first you have the right to mediation, which is a sit down between a member of the Department of Education, like your CPSE administrator, yourself, and a third party mediator arranged by the DOE to talk about, the full picture of what your child needs, what you want, and what the Department of Education has recommended, and to see if you can come to an agreement. Or you have the right to an impartial hearing, which is kind of an escalation and next step there, which is an actual legal proceeding with a judge, where it would be up to the judge to gather all this information about your child from their evaluations, any information you're providing as a family, the recommendations of the DOE, to make it a final determination about what is most appropriate for your child. I know all of that stuff sounds really scary. I always tell families, just don't be afraid to disagree. It doesn't have to be an escalation or a huge conflict. You can just simply say to the administrator, I don't agree. And you can have subsequent follow-up meetings and go along this line of your parental rights until you come to something that you are comfortable with for your child. The most important thing is for you to feel comfortable that your child is going to get what they need to make meaningful academic progress and to be the most successful preschool student they can be. So just don't be afraid to disagree and to ask for help, to, calmly have these discussions with the CPSE administrator. So you're sitting down for this meeting. Sorry, I think we have a minute or two before we're going to go to Q&A. But as you're sitting for this meeting, you'll have these discussions, you'll go through the contents of your child's IEP. And at the end of the meeting, the administrator will furnish you with something called a final notice of recommendation of services, which will state plainly exactly what they are recommending for your child. What type of class setting, if one is indicated, related services, exactly how frequently they will be, and how many months of the year they will take place. In programs like early intervention, your child gets services all year. The Department of Education follows the academic calendar. So for most students, this means they get services from September to June. That will all be spelled out in this final notice of recommendation of services for your child. That will be furnished to you by the CPSE administrator for you to sign off on to state your agreement. They will state their agreement as well, and then from there, CPSE services would move forward to be implemented. If you are not in agreement with any component of that final notice of recommendation of services, you do not have to sign it. You can come back, arrange another meeting before your child's initial eligibility for CPSE begins, or if you need to escalate to mediation and partial hearing, you can do that as well. But just know that when the CPSE administrator asks you to sign something, most likely it is that final notice of recommendation. They should specifically say that that's what it is. And you should make sure that you understand all parts of what's being recommended for your child before you go from there. We have 10 minutes left, so I think we're going to turn it over to questions and answers now. Again, I'm happy to answer questions similar to the other two that were previously asked. However, if you have really specific questions about your child, your particular situation where you're going to disclose personal information, the session is being recorded. So feel free to contact me and I will set up a time to talk to you about your specific situation.
Yes, thank you, Kelly, for such a wonderful presentation. Just a reminder for everybody here in the Zoom space today, you'll receive a copy of the slides in a follow-up email, as well as Kelly's personal contact information should you have any questions with very personal information about your situation. But again, we are opening the floor for questions. So if you have any questions, this is now the time. You can either use the chat or the Q&A box, and I'll read them out to Kelly. If not, thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate you guys joining us here at Synergia for such an important topic. I do want to say, if you don't have any questions, I will be launching the poll right now. So please stay put. While you guys think about any questions, you guys can also just fill out the poll. We'd really greatly appreciate it here at Synergia. Again, Kelly, thank you so much for being here today. It was such a great presentation, and I feel like a few parents and myself learned a lot of new things about the CPSE that maybe we didn't know before. So thank you.
Sure.
All right, and for those seeing us via Facebook, I will be stopping the live streaming now. So thank you so much if you're watching via Facebook. If you do have any questions and you're watching through Facebook, please reach out to me. I'll put my email in the comment box on Facebook. And if you need to get in touch with Kelly, I'll make sure to forward any messages to you, to Kelly. Thank you.